The content in this podcast is provided for informational and educational purposes only. Whilst we love unpacking psychological research and evidence-based insights to support well-being, this podcast is not a substitute for personal mental health care or therapy. Nothing we say should be taken as individualized advice. If anything you hear brings up concerns for you, we strongly encourage you to speak with your GP, psychologist, or another qualified health professional. You deserve support that's tailored to you. Welcome to This Might Help, where psychology research meets real life. We're your hosts. I'm Dr. Kira Hart.
And I'm Dr. Lauren Rossetti, and we're two Australian psychologists. And we are joining you today for an episode all about how to check in on our goals that we set at the beginning of the year, how to do a bit of a reset, and how to increase our motivation to actually keep pushing along towards our goals. Because this episode is dropping on the last day of March and officially the end of the first quarter of the year. And I don't know about you, but I have lost sight of some of those goals that we set in January.
100%. January feels like a lifetime ago, even though it was just 3 months ago. So we thought, what better time of year than to take stock and to reflect on some of those goals and see what's working well, maybe what's not working so well as well.
Yes. And just getting ourselves in order for the rest of the year. So before we get actually stuck into this, let's do our wellbeing wins and wobbles as usual. What are yours, Kira?
My wellbeing win was my birthday yesterday. So
happy birthday.
Thank you. That was a really lovely celebration, and still celebrating it over the weekend. So that's been very fun. My wellbeing wobble is maybe I felt a bit like anxious and had a bit of self-doubt this week. So I'm just practicing self-compassion and being kind to myself and gentle. What was your wellbeing wins and wobbles?
My wellbeing win was that I went interstate for a beautiful, beautiful wedding, and it was such a good time. All of it was good. Weather was beautiful, and all of the fun wedding things and just celebrations. That was a big wellbeing win. The wellbeing wobble was that I got out of an Uber to walk across a road towards this restaurant, and I've not picked up that there was a curb. And I tripped on the curb. I tried to catch myself. I failed to catch myself. I completely stacked it, hard stack onto the ground, and was in a bit of a state, really bruised like the bottom of my hand randomly. And that was definitely a wellbeing wobble.
Sorry to hear that. Did anyone see?
There were some people around. There were some helpers close by.
Oh, that's kind.
Very nice. But then there was also other groups of people that just kept on walking past.
Maybe had a little laugh. Who knows?
Yes. So that was a bit embarrassing. But no, I am alive and well, so that's good.
Good to hear. I'm glad.
We, as we said, are getting stuck into this kind of check-in. Q1, end of Q1 check-in, goal reset, and we know that everyone sets kind of New Year's resolutions and all of these goals in January, and it's very common that by the kind of end of January, a lot of people don't actually kind of stick to these goals, or your New Year's resolutions have kind of been abandoned by a few weeks into the year. And this time, though, this kind of end of Q1, beginning of Q2 is a good opportunity to get kind of like a reset and a reframe on our goals. What, Kira, is there something that you set at the beginning of the year? And how is it tracking?
Good question. I set a few goals at the start of the year. I broke my goals into like different areas of my life. So like career, friendship, finance, health. Some of my goals I think are tracking well. Other goals have just completely fallen off a cliff. If I'm even thinking like career goals and goals with this podcast. Sorry to admit, but I have dropped the ball with those ones. So I really appreciate this episode, and we know setbacks are inevitable.
Yeah.
We drop the ball occasionally.
Yeah.
But having this opportunity to take stock, reflect on what the goals are that I've dropped, and then kind of understand what's driving my motivation or lack of motivation, and what to do about it. This episode is perfectly timed for me. What about yourself? What were some of your goals, and how are they tracking?
I think I'm the same. Some are going well, some are not going so well. I have noticed in the last even like say 2 to 4 weeks that stuff has gotten busier and busier and busier for me, and I'm fully, like a lot of people, probably in the swing of the year. So you know, work is busy and friend stuff is busy and all of the things are busy, and I have dropped off a bit more with those kind of daily goals I had of like, you know, the things I'm doing to keep myself feeling extra well. So I need to take stock of those things. So I'm going to be doing this reflection this episode and absolutely doing a check-in. Some things going good, some things not going so good, and I think that's the way it goes. But we know that there are times in the year and times in our life when it feels like a really good time to start something or to kind of have that fresh start effect.
I feel like New Year's Eve is often like the go-to, like New Year, start fresh, or milestones like birthdays. Like maybe if you're starting a new job, kind of these like landmark time points are often when people set goals.
There's research that shows that certain kind of points in time, or like you said, these like landmark type of times, they act as a psychological reset. So they give us that feeling of kind of a new chapter. And, you know, New Year's Eve or like the New Year's Day or birthdays, like you said, or even Mondays.
Start off a new week.
And that's when we can feel like, okay, we're leaving other things behind in the past and we're like starting fresh today. And Q1, like we've just finished the first 3 months of the year. That's finished and we're starting, you know, the next quarter, starting Q2. And we can use this as this kind of like fresh start effect to keep going.
Before we get into reflecting and checking in on our goals, thinking about our motivation can be really helpful, because sometimes our motivation can drop, and that's okay. It happens to us all. What is motivation? So it's our willingness to exert physical or mental effort in order to pursue a goal or outcome. And motivation is an internal state. So it's driven from within us and propels us to engage in goal-directed behavior. It's quite normal for motivation to kind of fluctuate over time. So if you found your motivation a little bit lower than what it was in January, that's okay. Me too. That's why we're doing this episode, to hopefully boost the motivation. So why does the motivation drop?
There are lots of reasons why our motivation might drop. One of those is the gap between expectation and reality. So the goals that we're setting in January, they're quite abstract. Like you haven't mapped out the rest of the year yet, or you haven't lived the rest of the year. But in January, you're setting all of these like future goals. This is what I'm going to achieve. And they're also quite emotionally charged. Like you're in that state of imagining like, you know, 2026 is the year that I'm going to do XYZ, or I'm going to feel this way, or this is going to happen to me. And we don't necessarily take into account how hard the process will be. So we have an expectation, but it might be quite far away from like the actual reality of making the progress to achieve the goal. And like we talked about in a recent episode about the planning fallacy, when we were talking about time, this is when we really underestimate like how long it's actually going to take. And we also don't necessarily take account of like the obstacles that will come up or the things that get in the way. And we might think that we'll see results or get this like improved feeling or all of these outputs or like achieve the goal really quickly or much sooner than it actually happens.
Yeah.
Like we know progress actually takes a long time.
Yes.
And so if you've started in January and you had a particular goal, you've been working towards it for that whole first month, but progress takes so long, you might have found that your motivation has now dropped, that we're in March, because it's hard and it takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
And then the reality also hits us of, the busy life and just all the different demands we're managing. I don't know, unexpected things come up along the way.
Yes.
And then your motivation can kind of collapse because the goal can feel a bit more impossible to achieve or harder to achieve.
Yeah.
I've been finding this with some papers that I'm working on because I've had like the unexpected delays of needing help from different people and waiting for feedback.
Yes.
And so then that has dropped my motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another reason why motivation can drop is explained by the notion the middle problem.
Yeah.
And the middle problem is this idea that motivation follows a U-shaped curve across goal pursuit. So it starts off really high at the beginning, maybe in January, and then it finishes high towards the end. And in between is kind of the lowest point, that middle point.
Yeah.
And this is where most people disengage. It can feel like progress is really slow and the finish line is still so far away.
Yeah.
Which can be hard to kind of drive that motivation.
Yes.
It also helps explain that why towards the end of the year, things can like pick up again and you're on like the final sprint. Like people can have that extra boost of motivation as they're working towards a goal that's really close to be achieved.
Yeah.
But throughout the middle of the year, things can get tough.
Yeah. Even when, let's say your goal is to run a marathon or you're training for a half marathon or something, when you start that running journey, you're motivated. Like you're going for all of the regular runs, you're seeing the progress. But when you're in that big block in the middle, when it's like, I don't know, whatever the Ks are there.
Yeah, just doing 20 Ks every week.
Yeah. And it just feels like it's hard, you're not making the same progress, and the big goal at the end still feels so far away.
Yes.
But then once you're like 2 weeks out from, the race and you're actually meeting those Ks, then suddenly the motivation comes back and you're a lot more able to kind of work towards the goal because it's closer. So I think at the moment, when even though we're in March and that's just the end of the first quarter of the year, we're still kind of reaching and approaching that middle zone.
Yeah.
Let's say if your goals are like year kind of goals, then we're in that drop of motivation.
Yeah.
There's also intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, which lots of people may have heard about before. It kind of goes around. So extrinsic motivation is that external motivation, and that's when we're doing something for an external reward, or we're doing it because of social pressures, or we're doing it to avoid some type of consequence. So we're doing it for reasons like outside of ourselves. And then there's intrinsic motivation, and that's doing something because you find it generally interesting or enjoyable, or it aligns with your values.
Yeah.
An example of extrinsic motivation is just like, I should exercise more, and maybe it's I should exercise more because everyone else is exercising, or because I'll feel guilty if I don't, or my family members telling me I have to. And then intrinsic motivation is an example of that would be, I want to move my body because it helps with my mood, or it helps me feel better. And that's an internal motivator. Extrinsic motivation, so that external motivation, is a lot more fragile. So it tends to fade more quickly. So it doesn't keep you motivated for as long because the circumstances around you can change, or that reward or thing, that was motivating you on the outside might pass or might like go away, and then you're not motivated again. And a lot of Q1, or like those first, chunk of the year type goals that you set up in January, for example, they can be set from that kind of external pressure of wanting to have like New Year's resolutions or wanting to have all these New Year's goals and seeing all this content online about like the types of things you should be achieving for 2026.
Yeah.
And so they might be from external motivation or that extrinsic motivation rather than from that genuine kind of internal values. And so that can also be why our motivation drops.
So thinking about some of your own goals and
Yeah.
maybe the goals that have stalled
Yes.
so far, can you reflect on whether it was something you personally wanted? Was the drive coming from within, the intrinsic motivation, or were they more extrinsic
Yes.
motivated
Goals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it something that you felt you should want, but when you actually reflect now, oh, like that's not something I do want?
Yeah.
There are lots of reasons why our motivation can drop, and we're all probably feeling a similar sense at the moment of a bit of lowered motivation compared to the beginning of the year. And so this is a time when we want to do a meaningful quarterly check-in.
Let's do it.
Start here before you go ahead and like add new goals to your plate, or before you just kind of continue doing the next 3 months with nothing different. So you kind of don't want to jump into, you know, April and May and June and the rest of the year with things just going as they're going. This is a really good time to do a check-in. A quarterly check-in is also not about judging what you did or didn't do from January to March.
Yes.
Although that's easier said than done, because I've definitely been doing that.
100%.
It's really just a moment to reflect.
Yeah.
And you want to reflect on what's been working, what has changed since January, and like what you want to carry into the next part of the year.
Exactly. A great place to start is reviewing your goals with self-compassion.
Yes.
So limit the criticism as much as possible.
Yes.
So the instinct we often have when goals slip is to be a bit self-critical and think, you know, I wasn't as productive as what I would have wanted to be.
Yeah.
But we know that this is counterintuitive. Being self-compassionate and being kind to ourselves provides much greater motivation to continue to improve after those setbacks and failures, which are inevitable as things pop up throughout the year. So, for example, rather than saying, I've dropped the ball with all my goals and I am like so unmotivated and I'm so lazy, that's an example of being quite self-critical.
Yes. Don't do that.
Don't do that. And something you could say instead is, you know, I haven't made as much progress as I hoped.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Let me understand kind of what's working, what's not, and what I can improve and do things different.
Absolutely. Next, check your values.
Yes.
Are these still your goals? So we're 3 months into the year. Life may look quite different to January.
The weather is very different.
The weather is different.
My life was different. So,
and I think even though it literally feels to me like the year has like clicked, like it does feel the things that happened in January feel like they were a long time ago, but also I cannot believe that we're at the end of March. Like I just feel like it's gone so fast.
Yeah.
And so life might look different and there might be priorities that have changed, unexpected things that have happened, and it can make a January goal kind of irrelevant to now or just misaligned with what you want if things have changed.
Yeah.
And so before you try to remotivate yourself around all your January goals, you should ask yourself, is this goal actually aligned with what matters to me right now? So what value does the goal serve? You know, it could be health or it could be learning or creativity or connection. If the value is still there, like you still really value connection, for example, but the goal in January you set feels wrong, like it doesn't feel like it quite fits with that value, then reshape the goal. So how could it better align with that value? And check whether you have goal harmony.
Goal harmony.
Yeah, I really like this concept. So there are researchers that use this term goal harmony to describe whether your goals fit together. This is a thing that I think people really commonly don't consider with goal setting, and which I find that I always don't necessarily consider. It's all your goals, they don't exist in isolation.
No.
So they need to work alongside your work and your family life and your leisure and your friends and your health and your finances.
Yes.
And if your goal or any of your goals are constantly in conflict with another part of your life, that tension will reduce your motivation.
Yeah.
Because essentially every time you're coming up to the goal, you're coming up to working towards the goal, there are other factors within your life that just don't quite fit with it.
As you're saying this, it's resonating so much with me, and it's realizing the kind of goals I've dropped. If I think about the goals I've set across different areas of my life, like health, finance, career, social, a lot of my goals aren't in harmony with each other. Like there's some pretty big goals across different areas. And so reflecting on it makes me understand, okay, it makes sense why I've dropped this social goal, because I'm really driving hard on my financial goals at the moment and things are out of balance. So, you know, whilst it's great to have these goals, it's also important to make sure that they're in harmony with each other.
Yes, absolutely. And even just the sense of time, like we've got limited time. We can only do so much, although we did unpack how to make the most of your time management in our recent episode. But, you know, you could have the goal to be making progress on this thing every day, for example, like it's a project and you want to commit time to it every single day. Well, then you can't have 5 goals to commit time to 5 different things every single day, because it's just going to be in conflict.
It's too much.
And those things are always going to be coming up against each other. So you can ask yourself, does this goal fit with the other things I'm trying to do right now, or is it competing with them? And is this a goal for later, or after I focus on this other goal? So you might prioritize your goals and think about that goal harmony.
I love that question. And my answer is yes, a lot of my goals are competing with each other. Okay. Step 3, knowing when to let a goal go. And maybe I need to do this in summer flight. So not every goal we make has to be kept. As we all are probably aware of when we let some goals go. The ability to let something go or to quit something that is actually not working for us is a skill and can be a really good thing. So Dr. Dye from UCLA recommends setting tripwires or predetermined markers that prompt check-ins. So I love the predetermined marker of each quarter of the year, which we're doing with this episode at the end of Q1. So this quarterly check-in can be a good tripwire where we reflect and ask ourselves some questions, such as, is this goal still something I generally want? Is it feasible given my current circumstances? For me, no. And is there something more valuable I could do with the same time, energy, and money?
So setting up those regular check-ins. The next step is moving from avoidance to approach.
What do you mean by that?
So this is a goal kind of framing. So there's approach versus avoidance goals. Avoidance goals are when we're moving away from something negative. So we're avoiding something. So for example, I don't want to be so stressed. So you're trying to move away from that thing. Approach goals are defined around working towards something positive. So you frame the goal around, I want to move towards being more calm and feeling more rested, for example. Or I want to build habits that help me feel calm. So approach goals are working towards or approaching something positive, whereas avoidance goals are all framed around, I want to avoid something bad. So when we use approach framed goals, or we're working towards the positive things, those are more associated with better well-being and also just more motivation and persistence to keep pursuing the goal when we're thinking about, I want this kind of good thing to happen. I'm working towards this state rather than I just want to avoid this bad thing.
Yeah.
So when we're doing our check-in, you can have a look at your goals and see if any of them are those avoidance directed goals and ask instead, what am I actually moving towards? So if you've set a goal that you want to do, like for example, I want to spend less time doom scrolling on my phone. That would be an avoidance goal. But what are you actually moving towards? Maybe it's I want to spend more time present and connected with my partner. I want to spend more time reading and doing my hobbies. And so that's the actual like positive thing you're moving towards. So have a look at your goals and see if they're avoidance ones.
I love that. Another consideration is making sure your goals for Q2, so going forward, they're specific and they're not just vague intentions.
Yeah.
So if you still have handy the goals that you created in Q1, if you wrote them down somewhere,
Yes.
have a look and see, are they specific? Are they actionable?
Yes.
We know that specific challenging goals lead to significantly higher performance than just having a vague goal like do your best or try hard.
Yes.
Or be healthy. Like what does that look like specifically?
Yes.
We want to tell our brains exactly what to do,
Yeah.
and this will help us be successful.
Yes.
So revisit your goals with this in mind. For example, exercise more might become go for a 30-minute walk at least 4 days a week.
Yes, absolutely. And then you can also remotivate your kind of passion for these goals with things like a vision board, writing them down again, getting them all set somewhere in pen and paper, and making these Q2 goals or your goals moving forward into the next stage of the year, making them visible in your space so you see them, and that can keep some of that motivation going as well, because they're on your laptop or they're around your house, or you've got them like on your phone background, for example, to keep them alive.
Yes.
So we've got our goals set. We've thought about we've reviewed our Q1 goals. We've had a check-in about whether they still serve us, whether they still align with our values, whether they're specific and actionable, and what ones maybe we need to drop and get rid of.
Yeah.
Now that we've done that review, that's all good and well, but we still might feel like the motivation is low. We still might feel like we're getting a bit stuck. Or, for example, we can get really stuck into our goals for the next week. We're like, perfect. I'm motivated. I've reignited the passion of my goals, and that lasts for 7 days, and then the motivation drops again. So how do we actually boost our motivation and keep it going?
Yeah. Strategy 1 is to connect to those intrinsic motivators.
Yes.
So those things within us that are driving us, such as our values.
Yes.
So motivation, it's the energy that drives us towards doing something, and knowing the source of what's driving us can be really helpful.
Yes.
So as you said earlier, intrinsic motivators are the goals feeling meaningful, interesting, satisfying, enjoying doing what you're doing.
Yeah, it's those internal things that, drive us to achieve the goal.
Exactly. Whereas those extrinsic motivators, intrinsic and extrinsic, they kind of sound the same.
Yeah.
But
it's very
external motivators is when we like pursue a task or chase a goal as a means to an end.
Yeah.
So to get recognition, to get a reward, to avoid a negative consequence.
Yeah, or like we feel we should be doing that or we have to be doing it.
Exactly.
We know that intrinsic motivation, those internal motivators, they lead to better outcomes. They lead us to consistently work towards our goals.
Yeah.
They do good things for our motivation. But what actually helps us to build intrinsic motivation? There are 3 things we can think about. The first one is autonomy. So feeling that you are choosing to do something rather than being forced to. Next one is competence. So feeling that you are actually capable of making that progress and setting the right level of challenge with your goals. And then relatedness. So feeling connected to others through the goals, whether that's, a partner, a friend, a community, or just feeling like there's a shared purpose for your goals. So for example, something like a run club where you've got other people around you. So having autonomy competence and relatedness with your goals and the things you're working towards can build your focus on the intrinsic motivators for them. So you can ask yourself, where can you increase the autonomy? Can you find a community around this goal? And are you challenging yourself at the right level?
Another way to boost motivation is to build your self-efficacy.
Yeah.
So your belief in your own abilities has been shown to be a really strong predictor of your motivation and performance.
Yeah.
How do we build our self-efficacy though?
So we can reflect on our own past successes to know that you can succeed.
Yeah.
So thinking back to what you've done before, you've been through something harder.
I can do this. I've done it before.
Yes. Or I've done something similar, or I've got all of the skills that I need to be able to do this thing. So reflecting on those successes, giving yourself the evidence, like reminding yourself of the evidence that you can do this.
Yeah.
Similar experiences from others can also be helpful. So you might see someone similar to you succeed.
Yeah.
And you know that saying of like, if they can do it, I can.
Yes, exactly.
Social support is also really important in building up that self-efficacy. So encouragement and positive feedback from the people around you that you trust, building you up. And then noticing our psychological and or that emotional state is also helpful. So noticing that we might feel nervous or we might feel discomfort about a goal. There might be something that we're working towards and it does feel uncomfortable or really challenging.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're going to fail or that you don't have the skills to do the goal. It just means that your body is preparing yourself for the next step or preparing for something unknown. So reframing those kind of nerves and yucky feeling as this doesn't mean that you can't do it. It's just your body preparing you to do it.
Exactly. So if your motivation is low, it might be worth checking in with your self-efficacy and thinking, have I given myself the evidence to say that I can achieve this task or I can chase this goal?
Yes. And you can think back to one small win from your, first quarter that you can acknowledge. And what does that tell you about your capabilities? You've probably made progress across, a number of your goals and done things within these first 3 months. So reflecting and thinking about that and using that as evidence that you can keep pushing along. Another strategy for boosting motivation is thinking about making consistent progress. So we know that meaningful progress and noticing that progress is one of the biggest drivers of motivation. So as we keep making small steps towards something, that kind of keeps that motivation ignited so that we are moving forward. And if you're waiting to feel motivated before you act, you're kind of doing it in the opposite order. We want to do the actions and make that small progress because that then creates and generates the motivation that keeps pushing us forward. And to do this, or to, I guess, make our brains aware of the progress requires us to track that pretty explicitly. So you want to track your progress that you're making in a way that is consistently reminding you that you are actually moving forward towards your goals. So this might be a habit tracker. It might be, a journal entry. It can even be just checking things off a to-do list. It is things like this quarterly check-in as well. These all give your brain a signal of your progress that then helps to keep that motivation going. If you don't do any kind of check-in or you don't acknowledge the progress you've made, then we can feel again really stuck in that middle zone of the goal where we feel really far away from the start and really, really far away from achieving the goal. So those little bits of progress tracking are really important.
I must say I'm very guilty of not tracking my progress, but as you were saying that, it really links in with also building up your self-efficacy to look back and think, you know what, I actually have achieved things. I have the skill set to achieve this goal. I just need to keep persevering.
And it'll be like, at work you've done something and then someone else acknowledges that great thing you've done, or, you know, says, wow, this is so amazing. Look how far you've come. And then when you have that boost of positivity or feedback on your progress, you're suddenly remotivated about work. You know, you're like, oh, great, I'm going to work towards the next thing. So it's essentially just doing that for yourself regularly.
Exactly. Another way to aid motivation is to embrace the flexible goals and build in a buffer when we need. So one of the reasons goals fail is that they're designed with no tolerance for those inevitable things that pop up and setbacks that come into our lives. So when we have really rigid all or nothing goals, missing a day or kind of getting slightly off track can feel like a total failure rather than just like a tiny little slip up. So deliberately building in a buffer into our goals can be really helpful rather than needing to perfectly and consistently hit a target, allowing for missing the occasional day or missing instances. For example, if you have the goal, I will go to bed at 10 p.m. every single night. That can be pretty hard to achieve some weeks as life pops up and events come on and, you know, things happen. Whereas setting a more flexible goal that's
buffer.
That buffers in some considerations, such as I'll aim to be in bed by 10 p.m. 5 nights a week. Or I really like the no 2 days in a row principle. So if you have the goal of going to bed at 10 p.m, you miss it one night, that's okay. Just try not to miss it 2 days in a row.
I love that. This I make a mistake with all of the time in setting these all or nothing goals. And I did it with the habit tracker I was talking about another week. A number of those are these flexible goals, and those are the ones that I've found the easiest to actually maintain over this first quarter. So they were the goals, like, for example, one of them was to go to Pilates 4 times a week. And I think because I had that flexibility in, okay, it was 4 times a week, and maybe I wanted to go in an ideal world even more, but I was giving myself that buffer. It meant that most weeks I actually went more than that goal anyway, and the weeks when I made it 4 times, I was still achieving the goal. Whereas the habits that I stuck in my habit tracker, and one of them was to be in bed at 10 p.m. every night, it just like absolutely can't happen sometimes. And so then that goal has been one that's just fully slipped off my radar completely because I set a very rigid all or nothing goal. Oh, lots to learn from this podcast for me. So with your goals you've set for Q2 and beyond, have a look at them and see if they're really rigid and all or nothing, or you've got way too many, and think, how can I make this a more flexible goal that allows for life to actually happen around it?
Build in a bit of a buffer.
Yes. There are 3 key questions now to sit with as we move forward into Q2 and to help you with this quarterly check-in of your goals. The first one, what worked? So acknowledge progress that you made honestly without minimizing it. Try not to be self-critical about the progress. What habits or strategies or things in your environment helped you in this first quarter to move forward? What's working well? Question 2, what got in the way? So not to kind of blame yourself, but find out what useful information you can in those first 3 months where things maybe got in the way of your goals. Was it that you don't have enough time? Was it about your energy? Was it kind of something external that happened to you? Is it because all your values are in conflict with each other? And then the third area is, what do I want to carry into the second quarter of the year? So you could choose, you know, some specific, focused, actionable goals that you really want to carry through into quarter 2 and focus on. And this week you could block out half an hour, kind of like an appointment, put it in your diary and write the answers to those questions, have a review of your first quarter and set yourself up again to smash the next 3 months of the year.
I love that. Those 3 questions. So good.
So that's the end of another episode of This Might Help podcast.
Yeah.
As always, you can find references and resources in the show notes. There's also helplines in there if anyone needs them. We are on socials, on Instagram and on TikTok at This Might Help podcast. And we're also on YouTube if you want to watch us. But otherwise, we'll catch you next week for another episode.
Happy goal setting or goal reframing.
Yes, and happy end of Q1.
Happy end of Q1. And happy birthday to me.
And happy birthday to Kira. Bye. This podcast was recorded on Wurundjeri land. We acknowledge and pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional custodians of this country. We honour their knowledge and resilience and the ongoing impacts of colonisation on well-being.